All right, awesome. So we are recording and good to go. Welcome everyone who is tuning in this morning. I think this is our week 7 that we are on now. Today's topic is going to be how to progress your account, and we're going to be talking about all the ways that you can go about min-maxing. So if you are looking to progress your account as quickly and as efficiently as possible, we're going to really be approaching this from a free-to-play perspective at bare minimum, but then again we will talk about some spending elements too as well as we get a little bit deeper into the show. Now initially, we're going to be starting off talking about account creation. So there's a couple big topics. The first one is going to be, I'll kind of give you a general outline for what we will be discussing and talking about today. Again, the first is going to be account creation. Then we'll talk about joining an alliance. We'll take a look at the inner city for your castle and talk about a lot of the buildings there, and then a few of the other areas, again, i.e. kind of Lord Talents. We'll talk about Arena, Harbor, some of the other areas, Academy, Tech, Route Paths. Then we'll do Outer City. Outer City is going to be mainly focusing on things like gnomes, bosses, RSS nodes, other areas that you can utilize as well. We'll do a little bit of a touch-up on a brief spending guide, just depending on your budget. And then we'll also do a little bit of talks on kind of using action points, stamina point usage as well. That'll also kind of factor into that Outer City part. And then we'll just wrap it up as we usually do with kind of a live Q&A. So that's always a big thing that we do at the end of our shows and usually we'll always allow for in between the topic points as well for Q&As to happen. So the one thing I always like to preface as well, right, is that if you are an existing member, then you're more than welcome to ask a question over voice. As far as if you're a new member or just a visitor, we just ask for you to ask a question in the voice channel chat whenever that does open, which hopefully should be shortly. Let me, if I can, let me see here. When available. Okay, cool. I just want to get that posted, and let me just hit up a second person just in case so we can get the voice channel chat opened hopefully a little bit sooner than later. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is starting out with account creation. We're going to initially talk about so there's a couple parts here when it comes to account creation, right? If you're a new player, or let's even say that you are re-rolling on a new server. The important part is that there's two big factors to look at. One is which faction to choose. This is a little bit of the lesser of the two. The bigger factor is choosing the right server to start in. And there's a couple areas that you can go into when you are looking at what server to start in. Now, some of those can be up to, let's say you're on the official Discord like we are now, and you decide that you want to take a look, for example, at the recruitment channels, right? You can head over to the server or jumper recruitment channel now, and for example, you can look at any of the ads that are there, right? So this is a soft indication on how you can find out if there are any groups that are going to be going to upcoming servers. And you can approach this one of two ways. You can either join all of the servers that you see posted to try and get an idea on maybe what server some of these groups are going to. Whether or not you choose to join a group, the important part is that you can at least get the information and the knowledge of where are they going, how big are the groups, right? What type of a server are they looking to build? Because that'll at least give you as a player an idea on, okay, maybe this group sounds good, or you know what, maybe there's no groups at the moment based on what they're pitching are the type of a server I really want to play in, right, for me as a player. Then you can at least use that information to avoid those groups, right? So there's two sides to that. Then it's a matter of, okay, well, if you're going to go into a server solo or just a non-jumping group server, then you can at least know what you're going to get into, right? The big thing that we always talk about when you're going in, because this is something we've talked about even last week and the week before, is the important part here is that when you are joining a new server in a kingdom builder, right, specifically IK, is that there is just this unknown, right? There's the general volatility that comes with any new servers in these types of games, right? Regardless if it's a kingdom or a server, whatever they label it as. And that's mainly because if there is no structure and if there's no organization going in day one, and the example we give is that, right, it's like if a big jumper group goes into a server or they don't, and then it's just individuals that are creating alliances, and then it's a matter of hoping and praying that all of these individuals who most likely think in different ways are going to be able to come together for the betterment of the server's health. And that's the challenging part, right? Is that, it would be like getting 20 different people in a room and hoping that they're going to be able to agree on a good amount of topics. And that unknown of just not being able to see what could happen, right? That's the challenging part. So that's one of the big reasons why you would see a jumping group started, right? It's to mitigate and to go in with some level of structure. So that way you can avoid things or have a higher chance of avoiding things like a civil war, unnecessary PvP, players that are just going around and attacking whomever they want, whenever they want, that is just doing nothing but just damaging your overall server health, your player activity, and even more importantly, your server's players, your players' retention on that server. Right, one of the biggest things we talk about is that, right, if you want to have a truly successful server in some areas and you want to be able to play somewhere for a long time, then the big thing you have to look at is how are we going to be able to retain the most amount of active players in our server, right? What do we have to do to not only increase a player's overall gaming experience, because, again, I don't know if anyone here, just as a quick show of hands, right? And again, I know that there are some people here. Again, if you're a visitor or if you're new to Discord, just as a friendly reminder, again, we're not going to be calling on anyone who is new or a visitor, but if you have a question, you're more than welcome to ask in the voice channel chat once that does open up, which hopefully it will shortly. But as a quick show of hands, has anyone here seen the TV shows Lost or The 100? Because I'm going to make a fantastic example, and I'm just curious. If you've seen the TV shows Lost or The 100, please raise your hand. Okay, awesome. Okay, so at least a good amount, maybe about 6 or 7. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. All right, so the example I'm going to give you is that when, if you, I'll give a brief premise for these shows without spoiling anything, and I'm gonna tie this all back into how this is relevant when you are deciding what server you want to start out in. In these shows, right, as Lost for an example, right, it's a group of passengers, they crash land on an island, and they are, however many, I think it's like 30 or 40, however many people. And in Lost, it's, a group of younger adults that are coming down from space onto a planet to kind of have no expectations or idea of what they're going to find when they land there. Now, in both of these scenarios, there are multiple individuals, right, in these two examples where they have to figure out what's the next step, right? I mean, you have to logically think about, like, what are you going to do? I don't know if anyone here has seen that show Naked and Afraid, right? Another slightly decent example. But it's almost as though you're getting put onto a piece of land or an island with 40 to 50,000 individuals. And you have to figure out, what are you going to do next, right? Keep in mind, there's, imagine, like, there's no government, there's no bonds, there's no friendships, there's no groups, there's no communication lines, right? You have no idea what's going to happen next. All you know is that a lot of active players are getting placed onto these new servers, and they're joining alliances, and they're climbing the leaderboards, and they're going out and attacking gnomes and gnome bosses, right? And they're just doing general level progression. But outside of that, what are the big topics, right? And again, this all leads into account creation, right? Before you even start as a player, is you then have to think about, okay, well, after all that's said and done, right, when do the real big hurdles start? Well, the real big hurdles start once you start having conflict. Like if you have two alliances that want to go for the same city, maybe you have multiple alliances that want to go for a capital city, right, which is a gold production city, right? It's obviously going to be more important to go to try and acquire those types of capital cities than it would a regular one. What's going to happen when you have certain alliances that just want to expand their territory, right? All of these things can lead to essentially kind of server self-destruction, right, and just unnecessary PvP that happens. That is why we talk about the importance of whether or not you are interested in joining a jumper group, which in my opinion is really the best way to go. And that's because it is going to allow for you, it's going to give you more assurance in the long run, because groups can act as deterrents when they're joining a new server to, again, as we've mentioned, avoid things like unnecessary PvP, civil war. They're able to provide immediate, if not hopefully a very soon, structure and some form of organization to the server, where they can at least, at minimum, be that, I don't want to say like policing force, but they can be that supporting tool for the server where they can go out and take care of people that are bullying, right? They can handle issues of small groups or an alliance that's just doing nothing but going out there and attacking everyone. And that's the big reason why I think when you look at jumper groups compared to going into a server solo, there's just a lot more pros than there are cons. But again, not everyone may want to do that, right? And that's why we talked about in the beginning, it's okay if you do want to go in solo, just go in with realistic expectations. Because these types of games are so much more than you just going in as a player. They're so much more really deep, and the amount of depth that really goes into what you can do in Kingdom Builders outside of just being a player, in my opinion, is probably the most fascinating part about these types of games, right? You're basically building a country from scratch is how you have to look at it. And there's going to be people that are going to be more interested in the managing and the kind of, political landscape and kind of shaping an infrastructure for a new server than others will, and that's okay, right? Most players that are getting into a server, they just want to play, right? That's understood. You're usually looking at everyone else that is, or the others, right, that are interested in kind of taking more of those higher roles, that are going to be interested more on the kind of server management side, right? This more or less is kind of going to be your officers or your leads for alliances that are getting in. Okay, so now we've got kind of past the importance of choosing a server. Oh, also, I think voice channel chat just opened. Awesome. Thanks, Perry. If you're looking at voice channel chat, let's give some hearts for Perry for opening up the channel for us. Awesome. So again, if you guys want to have a general discussion, we usually have the channel open for us for any kind of general, just general talk that you want to have while we're doing the show. And then, of course, for anyone that wants to ask a question, you can also do that there in the voice channel chat. As a friendly reminder, right, we're only going to be calling on people who are current or existing members with roles. If you do have a question when we do open up our live Q&A or end of topic Q&As, that we'll do. Otherwise, please feel free to ask a question in voice channel chat, and then we'll kind of get to those in order. The last thing we're going to talk about for the account creation portion is which faction do you choose, right? This is a big question that we often get, which is what faction do I need to choose when I'm starting in a new server? The short answer that I'm going to give you is going to be that it doesn't really matter in the long run, right? There are the big reason why is because even though each faction will give its own respective 5% troop bonus or buff to HP, which is Shieldman, Spearman, and Cav. Again, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because once you get to kind of mid-end game or mid-later game, you're going to be able to, if you really want to take advantage of that kind of, micro late game buff, then you can, but it probably is going to be better for you to do that once you get to a point of where you're either consistently competing in things like AVA, because you already have your kind of end game lineup and you just want to take advantage of a certain HP buff. You could do it that way, or once server versus server comes out, then you can also take advantage of it that way as well, right? Where you're really kind of looking to do that late game customization just to take advantage of any and all the buffs. Maybe you're running a double Cav or a double Shieldman or a double Spearman lineup in the front, and you just want to take advantage of that extra 5% HP buff, right? Whatever it may be. Or let's say you're red and your buff is Cav, but you don't have Cav in your lineup. You have Shieldman or you have Spearman. Obviously, you would go to blue or green at that point. So little things like that you can do once you get a little bit more kind of into the later game. It's not really too important in the beginning. My recommendation would be, if you're just going into a server solo or with a small group, I would just join the alliance. I would just join the faction that's going to give you those extra starting rewards, which I think is some green gems and some VIP. Otherwise, if you're joining a jumper group, maybe they're assigning you guys to certain factions, so you're just going to kind of join where you're assigned, depending on how they go about doing that. So again, a couple ways to approach that. Okay, so that topic is more or less finished for account creation. Does anyone have a question on that topic? Right, for anything we've talked about, right? The importance of kind of choosing the right server, the factors that are going into a server, and how it's going to affect you as a player. Does anyone have a question on that before we get into the next topic, which is going to be joining an alliance and finding the right alliance to join? And again, if you're an existing member and you want to raise your hand to voice a question, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, for any visitors or new members, or even if you're just not in a position to talk on the mic, you're more than welcome to ask a question in the voice channel chat. And I'm just going to kind of read through here. Turloin said, is this about getting started or about progress? So Turloin, it's both, really. So sometimes it's usually what we like to try and do is provide good starting foundational context, so that way once we start diving into more of the progression-oriented pieces, a lot of what we're talking about can just be better understood. Let's see. I'm going to see Pouring asks, oh, of course, you're welcome. Pouring asks, hello, just asking, does it matter if I make a jumper on a new server compared to an older one? So the short version there is, personally, I like older servers just because, one, older servers are already semi-established, and you can, I want to say once you hit Lord level 10, you can then grab all of the eligible Chronicle rewards. In addition to that, you may also be able to join an alliance on an older server that has some capital building, so you can get some gold generation as well on your jumper. In addition to, if you join an older server that is most likely going to win every single COR event, you may also have the opportunity to complete contracts, which can also start gaining you COR points. And then you can also have an opportunity to gather gold at the end of COR. So I think there's a lot more pros than cons when it comes to starting in an older server compared to a newer one. But again, you have to do the research. You kind of have to figure out what is ideal. Dragon 25 on jumper, yeah, Bambaro knows. So yeah, and again, so it pays off a lot. I think some of the benefits to start on a new server is that, you could take advantage of Supreme Alliance, you could take advantage of City Siege, because those are some of the early big green gem payout rewards that you'll get for your alliance depending on where they place. In addition, you might have an easier time, especially if you're either just a heavy free-to-play grinder or if you're willing to spend money, you may be able to join a escalating alliance or a rising alliance in a new server that might be condensing or filling spenders, where you can then also get more chests. So again, I think there are some pros and cons. I just think that the pros weigh a little bit more in favor of starting in an older alliance than a new one. Alright, let me see. Someone had a hand raised. New to Discord. Cat Cake. Yeah, if you have a question, you're more than welcome to ask in the voice channel chat. We're just only going to take voice questions from existing members with roles. So, but if you hang around till next week, then an opportunity might be there. Alright, cool. So let me go ahead. Let's move on to the second topic, which is going to be joining an alliance. Now, usually once you start out, and you are, I want to say once you get to, I think it's chapter 2 or 3, you'll eventually be able to choose or pick an alliance. Actually, it could also just be after the tutorial, which I think is probably when it actually is. But once you do get to the point, which is pretty early on when you're creating your account, and you're able to join an alliance, there, for the most part, again, I'll give the two sides examples here, right? The one side is that if you are going into a server as a new account, or sorry, as a solo account or as a small group, for the most part, it doesn't really matter who you join. The best thing you could really do is just try to join the highest ranked alliance that'll take you, whether you have to apply and wait a little bit or you just get in immediately. Now, obviously there are some pros to cons depending on how long it takes for you to join the alliance, because yes, even though you want to try and join the highest ranked alliance that you can initially, it doesn't mean that joining a lower ranked alliance still will not pay off its own dividends over time. Usually when a server is just starting, it is pretty much like a rat race at that point. You are just trying to herd the cattle as fast as possible where you can bring in players to your alliance. Right? The important thing is that you're trying to fill up your player capacity as fast as you can to where you can get to that kind of 49 over 50, 50 out of 50 with active players. The main reason for this is because the faster and sooner that you go through bringing players into your alliance, the earlier you're going to be able to start donating to tech. And then the important part is that from there, you'll be able to start increasing your player capacity just that much sooner. So again, overall, if you're a solo player, small group, it doesn't really matter too much, right? Obviously, you'll probably try and join a similar alliance yourself, but again, really, you just getting in earlier than later, because you'll also be able to take advantage of the helps that you'll be getting, right? So as long as you're not joining an alliance that has 5 out of 50 players, even though there probably wouldn't be anything wrong with that, especially if they end up recruiting a lot. It's just, again, the thing to keep in mind is that if you don't know the leads, right? If you're not in a jumper project, or if you're just going in by yourself and you're not creating the alliance, you just want to participate as a player, those are just some things you have to keep in mind. Is that you don't know how much experience the lead has for the alliance you're joining. You don't know how efficient or effective they're going to be at recruiting and gathering players, right? Are they going to really know what next steps to do, right? And that's in those scenarios, which is the majority scenarios for the majority of players, is that you just don't know what's going to happen, right? You have no idea what to expect, especially if for the most part, if you have Kingdom Builder experience and you're coming into Infinity Kingdom, you more or less probably have a good understanding of, what you can do, or as far as what you're looking for when you're joining a server, and the type of alliance you probably want to be a part of. So I'm sure that will help. But again, keep in mind that that's just kind of where the roulette factor plays in, of you just not knowing what's going to happen. So again, right, joining an alliance as soon as you can is probably still going to be the best bet. If you're a group, then you probably already have an assignment on where you're going to go. But those are just some factors I would say. The last thing, before we move on to the next topic, is keep in mind, it is okay to interview your leads, right? A big thing that I would strongly recommend is I would message the lead and say, and just ask them, hi, I'm new, but I'm curious, what are, regardless if you say new or not, just ask them, right, what are your plans for the server? What do you want out of the server? Right? It is okay to do that. And if they can't come back to you with a good answer, right? Now, keep in mind, if you're a new player, you may not know, really what to ask, or better yet, even if you did ask, right, interpreting the answer depending on what they say to you, or even being able to ask follow-up questions. If you're someone who's played Kingdom Builders for a little while, you might have a little bit more knowledge and experience on maybe how servers can play out, right? If you've seen good or bad examples of leaders, depending on certain tendencies and trends that you've seen, then yeah, you might have a better understanding of the answer that you asking that question of a lead will give you. But do not be afraid to ask, right? Actually, it's probably one of the best things that you can do is, again, ask the leader, right? What are your plans for the server? What are what are you hoping for your, how are you looking for your alliance, or what are your plans for how your alliance is going to support or work in the server? Right, are we just going to be a fighting alliance, and we're just going to attack anyone and everyone and watch the world burn? Are we going to support for the server for health? Are we going to try and grab one city in each RSS zone? Are we just going to apply the first come first serve, and anyone that wants to go head to head in a city, right, we're just going to fight them? Again, there's a lot of different ways that it can play out, which is why it's good to ask leads those questions, so that way you can get more information. So okay, now from there, I think that is it for joining an alliance. Does anyone have a question on that? on that topic before we get into the next one, which is going to be talking about Inner City. And Inner City, we're going to go over all the buildings inside the city. We'll go over Lord Talent's Academy. This is really kind of where the actual progression part of the show for best practices is going to start. But before we get there, does anyone have a question in regards to joining an alliance, right? How to try and find a good alliance? If you do, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. Again, if you are an existing member and not a new to Discord new member or visitor, then you're more than welcome to. If you are one of those three, you're more than welcome to ask your question in the voice channel chat, and we will still answer it. But if you're an existing member in the server, then you're more than welcome to raise your hand, and we're happy to call on you. And I'll give it a minute or two and just watch voice channel chat about 60 seconds here just before we do move on to the next topic, in case someone wants to type a question out for that. Abelito, hey, welcome. Alright. Okay. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions there for that topic. So let's go ahead and we'll move on to the bread and butter of the show, as it were, which is going to be talking about your inner city progression, and then we'll kind of talk about outer city. So starting with inner city, let me just take one of my accounts that I have open right now so we can kind of go in somewhat of an order. So the most important part here, as far as when it comes to general progression, is really a couple things. So before we even get into some of the city buildings, let's start kind of on the outer side. So we're going to look at Lord Talents first, and if you have your game open, you are more than welcome to follow along. I know this is something that some of the other players mentioned they were doing while we were doing our previous shows, is that they would have their game open and kind of follow along while we touch on each building or each area. So that way they can see it for themselves. Also keep in mind that all of our shows are recorded, and we do post the VODs here in the voice channel chat same day as well. So let's first start with Lord Talents. Now, I am a big believer in purely focusing development for a multitude of reasons. And this is pretty much until you get to a point of where you are Castle 40, you've maxed all your buildings at 40, and then at that point you can decide if you want to respec and do a little bit for military. And we're going to explain why. So, in general, before I even get into the talents and kind of going down the rows, you progressing your account. Now, let's say, worst case scenario, you are in a server where there's just a lot of PvP, there's a lot of fighting that's happening, right? There's not really any structure. You as a player are going to benefit more from the development tree over a longer period of time. And that's because when you focus on, if you were to focus on the military side, it limits your overall growth in a few areas. Now, every time that you attack someone, as far as another player, you will not get any experience for your immortals. You will also not get any equipment pieces or equipment shards. These are three of probably the biggest areas that you get from just generally attacking gnomes that factors into your march power and just your overall troop progression and power, which in turn is also arguably the most important power, generally speaking, because troop power is going to dictate right, are you going to be able to defend against certain players or certain powered players? Are you going to be able to attack certain powered players? Are you going to be able to defeat certain levels of garrisons and cities? Are you going to be able to start attacking higher level gnomes consistently, higher level gnome bosses, eventually to the point where you can start one-shotting more and more of them? Are you also going to be able to have higher gathering load capacities, which means that you're not going to have to sit there and overly micromanage and come back onto the game every hour? Maybe you can, send your gatherers out and you'll have to come back on for 2 or 3 hours, right? So it's all big benefits why it is extremely important to focus really on long-term prep, because if you compare the same free-to-play player, or you had 2 players that are at the same free-to-play status, and you had one player that does nothing but focus on development, and then you had the other player that did nothing but focus on military, even though they're attacking, they're probably getting a lot of honor points, they're probably boosting their nobility level, and they're getting resources in order to keep leveling up buildings. The challenge is that sooner, probably rather than later, the person who's focusing on development is going to have a troop power that's going to be stronger than the person that's focusing on military, which means that in most cases, they'll never have to attack the person that's constantly out there PvPing, because they'll be able to get consistent, successful defenses or defense victories off of that player who's attacking. So a lot of it is just about having a different mindset for your approach on how you can still benefit from that. In addition, if a point in time ever came up where the player who has the higher troop power, because they're focusing on development, ever wanted to go out and attack the person who's just doing nothing but focusing on military, you will probably get to a point where you will then be able to have more successful victories against them as well, because you're investing 100% of your focus on development. So let me go and now talk about Lord Talents. So with Lord Talents, and we'll talk about the development tree first, as far as where to go from here. So initially, and I'm just going to go top down from on development, and I think we've posted this somewhere as well. Let me see. I think I have this in general chat. Give me a moment. Let's see here. I have this posted somewhere. I'm going to find it. This is why doing searches is really good. Let's see here if we can find it for you guys. Then I'll post it in. Let me see. Is it development tree? Here we go. Okay, fantastic. I found it. Let's post this. I'm going to post this in voice chat gen. Okay. And then I'm just going to kind of go down the list. So the first thing you're going to focus on is ideally going to be massive construction. You want to get that up to 10% building upgrade speed. Second is going to be experienced, which is Immortals gain 100% bonus XP when fighting gnome units. And again, doubling on your XP, especially if you're full of troops and you're able to attack your highest level gnome based on your primary troops' power for that you can attack, is going to be great, because you're getting double XP on the highest level gnome that you can attack, which is the most amount of XP that you can get currently for your account as well at that time. Next is going to be Plentiful Gold. That's going to increase your gold production by 10%. Pretty much almost a no-brainer here. Gold is the most finite and important resource, arguably, in the game at the moment, at least if we're just talking about between the five. Next is going to be Divine Walker. This is going to increase your marching speed by 50% and reduces AP cost to 0. Right, you can store up to 3 of these. These are basically 3 free hits at arguably 50% increased speed, which is really good, especially if you're looking to use this, because you can use these as well when you're doing PvP, which is nice. The next one is going to be Leaps and Bounds. This is increases Academy tech upgrade speed up to 10%. Again, pretty much a no-brainer on this one as well. And then we're going to do Safe and Sound on the next row, which is troops cannot die when fighting gnome units. This is a really great talent because it allows for you to test how high of a gnome level you can attack. You may find that if you are, let's say, attacking level 15 gnomes, or let's say level 4 gnomes, and you're at 5200 recommended power, or you're at 5200 power, you can probably beat a Trent or a gnome at level 4, but you also might be able to get a successful victory off of a level 5 and 6 gnome, even though they're a little bit higher in recommended power than you are. So this talent allows for you to test those things out without taking heavier troop losses, and then if you're able to get victories on them, then you know, okay, now I can start attacking this next higher one. So I like using this talent as kind of a soft feel out on, can I now start attacking this higher level gnome? Alright, next one is going to be... Where am I going here? Next one's going to be Recruit Talents, which is increasing training speed by 10%. Now, there may be a time where it may be more beneficial... excuse me, I had to get my my mid-session yawn. Those are lovely. There may be a time where you may consider switching to Skillful in Medicine, which is reducing the cost of healing for seriously wounded. Now, both of these skills or talents will go up to 10%. The reason I like taking recruit talents more is because of the growth achievements. And we'll get to those in a moment. But there's a specific growth achievement that allows for you to gain extra Lord EXP and resources once you hit certain milestone tiers for the amount of troops that you've trained overall. So this skill will just help you with that a lot more than the other one will. And you also will eventually get to a point where you are able to kind of break that plateauing of RSS gathered. Usually this will happen once your 4th March comes available to you at Lord level 30. And then you'll be able to start gathering one of each primary resource consistently. This is going to help you get to a point where you'll always be able to train troops, right, regardless of the tier level. And then you'll also get to a point where you can probably start rotating between 2 and 3 building upgrades at a time, especially once you start getting to those higher resource costs. And the earlier you're able to start stockpiling your storage or warehouse, the better. The next is going to be Otherworldly Helper. I like Otherworldly Helper because it reduces the cooldown time for free summons in the Hall of Immortals by 8 hours. This is for your Philosopher Shards and the full stone for both of the free summons that you can get. In addition to this, they also go toward another growth achievement, which is Immortal Summoned. And I think it's either Immortal Summons or Shard Use. Let me see exactly what it's called. Advanced Summon. So you advanced summon 325 times, right? So again, one of those is going to go towards that on a daily basis. And then, oh gosh, if I can do math correctly, if it's every 16 hours for the free Philo Stone, oh geez, 32, I have to try and do math here, and then 48. Yeah, so you're going to be able to do, you'll be able to do three extra summonings every 2 days. So again, that's just going to go towards that growth achievement as well, which is really just nice. Again, doing the increased forge conversion rate is okay. Increased crit rate of resource prey by 5%. That one actually isn't bad, but I still just like the Otherworldly Helper a little bit better. And then next is going to be increasing warehouse storage, right? Each of these go up to 25%. You can either increase general warehouse storage or you can increase warehouse protection up to 25%. What I would say is that if you are, I still like storage no matter what, but if you are in, let's just say, a heavy war server, you may consider, i.e. Server 5, shout out, you may consider going warehouse protection increased, because you're probably never going to get to a point where you're able to keep resources or even get to max storage. So having a higher amount of protected resources so that way you always have them on reserve or in the bank in order to train troops is probably going to be more proficient if you're in that type of a server. Otherwise, I still like going with filled warehouse to just increase general capacity. And then the last one that we're going to talk about is Glorious Return. And there are a few you can go here, right? Seize the Day, which is reducing purification time for Dragon Chests. And then you can do the second one, which is increase troop load by 100% when gathering resources. 12-hour cooldown, you can store 2. I think it's okay, but I like Glorious Return because it doubles the rewards obtained from defeating gnomes, right? So doubling rewards could be 2 equipments. You could also double on the equipment shards as well. Again, Glorious Return, kind of a no-brainer there. So that's for Lord Talent. Now let's briefly talk about VIP kind of versus Philosopher Stones, as far as where you may consider using green gems in, because this is important depending on what you're going to focus on in the beginning. Now, I'm a big believer in focusing on VIP, especially if you're free to play, and even if you spend as well. Now, depending on how much you spend, you may consider going into the shop, which is in the top right corner of your map. It has the, I think it's like the wooden, almost looks like a backboard to your bed, but has the red and white little tent over the top. You could go into the shop, and then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can purchase Philosopher Stones for 300 green gems. Now, these would probably be the 2 most viable options that you could take when it comes to where you want to spend your green gems in. So maybe you want to spend them all just on Philosopher Stones, and you just want to keep doing more 9 times pulls in the Hall of Immortals so you can get earlier Immortals or a higher chance of getting more Epics, and then filling out some of your marches faster. Or if you just want to get more shards to do more pulls and market. On the other hand, again, as I said, right, you could also invest in VIP. Now, there's a couple milestones that you really want to try to hit for VIP, really regardless if you're free to play or spend. The first one is you want to try and hit VIP 6 because that's going to start giving you daily Philosopher Stone shards, which is similar to the Philosopher Stone shard summoning that you would get in Hall of Immortals. The next one is going to be VIP 10, which is when you get to 150k VIP. Right now, as a free-to-play, you can probably get here in about 2 months, I would say, give or take, just depending on if you're an alliance that is spending, where you're getting some extra green gems and VIP from that, even though the amounts are pretty minimal still, or if you're not. Once you get to VIP 10, that's where you're going to get the daily Philosopher Stone. This means that over a 5-day period, you are going to be able to get over a 9-day period. Yeah, so every 9 days you're going to be able to do 2 9-time summons, because you'll be getting a Philosopher Stone from doing your 100 daily chest every day, which is your activity chest, and then you'll also get one from your VIP daily chest, which is your daily exclusive chest that you get. So if you're getting 2 stones a day and you have to get 9 to do a time 10 summon, then again, you're looking at 9 days, 18, divide that by 2, you get your 2 9. So every 9 days, you'll be able to do a 9-time summon from Hall of Immortals. So there's a lot of value there that you're going to start getting over a period of time. So again, I'm just a big believer, on top of a lot of just the benefits that you get from VIP as well. I think that it's pretty understated, because VIP arguably is kind of what I would consider the last frontier. And that's because when you're focusing on VIP, right, compared to if you are investing green gems into Philosopher Stones, sure, you're getting an immediate short-term return on your investment, but the long-term benefits that you're going to get, especially once you get to the higher VIP levels, like 11, 13, and 15, are really almost understated. I mean, again, you're going to get increased research and building speed, dragon building speed. You're going to get higher AP limits and stamina point limits. You're also going to get dwelling production increases, right, which is going to increase the amount of gold you're getting as well. Right, these are limited things that you can't really get from other areas outside of Well of Time, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But again, these are also just going to go, VIP stats are really just going towards increasing your overall accounts progression. Rather than if you're investing 100% into Philo Stones, which sure is nice, but over a period of time, you're going to eventually unlock all of the Immortals that are in Hall of Immortals. So my belief, and again, that's just where my opinion comes into play, is that you're going to get a lot more longevity of return by investing into VIP, even if you know it's going to be a long road, rather than if you focused on, investing into Philo Stones. But again, if you have money to burn, then, more for you. I would say mashfika, but again, that only applies for me individually. Hard work loves the gun, perseverance pulls the trigger. Hey! Coming in with that wisdom. Thanks, Baby Yoda. Alright, let's get into my next one here, which is going to be... so let's talk about Well of Time. Before money solves everything. Cha-ching. Let's get into Well of Time now. So, if you're loading up in game and you look at Well of Time and you load it up, you want to then go, after you click in, you want to click on the book in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, this is your bonus book. After you clear chapters, as far as defeating the boss at the end, you will get additional bonuses. Now, these bonuses, for the most part, really start kicking in once you get, in my opinion, to past 8-8. 8-8 is, again, that's kind of the milestone one. That's the one where you kind of have to go with someone that has Dispel or Silence, or even someone like Hippolyta that you can use there as well. There's a list that we've posted in Gen Chat a couple times. But the reason why you want to try and get to 8-8 and past 8-8 as soon as you can is because you'll end up getting you'll get increased technology upgrade speed by 10%, and then once you get 9.8, that's where you get the gold production speed 10%, right? So you're really starting to stack on these things. And then you're also going to get increased dwelling capacity, which means that if you don't log in for a while, you're going to be able to have a higher capacity, which means it's going to take a longer time to fill that capacity in the dwelling, so you're not going to lose out on over-generation. And then the two last ones, right, this comes at 11.8 and 12.8, that's where you get the dragon upgrade speed. That's nice if you have consistent gold generation, that you're getting to where you'll have enough gold by the time that next dragon upgrade speed finishes. Or even if you're starting to train newer or younger dragons, where you can start increasing their level faster. And the last one is increases training speed by 10%. That's at 12.8. This is where you're going to be able to start taking advantage of finishing off that growth achievement for the amount of troops that you train. So again, all of these are really beneficial. 8.8 is kind of where it starts. These are things that are eventually going to help you out. Now, the way I typically go about Well of Time for general progression is I'll try, I'll check it daily, or if I feel like, I need to increase my primary troop power by another 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 before I attempt this again, I will just keep doing ×5 raids on the highest level Well of Time stages that I can. So at the moment on my main, I'm on 8. I think I'm on 8.8, 8.7, 8.8. So I'll do 8.6. I'll do 10 times raids on those, and then I'll do 8.4, 8.2, so on and so forth until I run out of stamina points. Right, and then once I get my march to a point of where I feel, I can now beat 8.8, or once I've worked in one of those special characters, or just whatever the next recommended troop power is, I'll be at 8.8. Then you can go ahead and attempt that. And then once you hit that new once you get the 3 stars for that new stage, then you start doing the raids top down or highest to lowest that way. And that's because the higher stage that you raid, right, the more amount of higher material resources you're going to get, and then also the more amount of experience scrolls that you're going to get as well. So it's a general benefit to your overall progression, which is really good. The next thing is going to be Treasury. Right? Treasury is really important because you always want to try and have 3 chests going, or 3 chests stocked up at all times, and this comes from just defeating gnome bosses. The short version here, and we'll touch on this a little bit for Outer City, but pretty simple. When it comes to using AP, you always want to go in order of gnome bosses, gnomes, and then once your AP's drained, then you can go to gathering resources. Okay, let me see here. Let's talk about, what do we have next? So Mysterium. So the thing with Mysterium, now that they've changed it, is, again, it really favors more of having 2 leveled marches. More so than it does a primary. And this is mainly if you're just trying to get past floor 4. The challenge, though, is that for free-to-play, it is rather difficult to level 2 marches pretty much at the same time. The main reason why is because of just the way that the game's mechanics are built in. It favors you to min-max heavily into a primary troop, and that's because you want to get to higher level gnome units and higher level bosses as fast as you possibly can. And that's because you'll start getting higher level or higher amounts of dragon shards, the higher level of the gnome boss you can attack. And that also plays in for multiple element types. In addition, if you are, so again, you can level multiple dragons at the same time, or at least back to back in intervals if you wanted to, because now you're able to start attacking level 6, level 7s for your earth, your wind, right, or fire, right, depending on who you're going for, after your primary dragon is leveled. From there, you can also attack higher level gnomes, which means you're going to be able to start getting higher level EXP scrolls that you can then start investing those into your second march, right? So the idea here is that, right, you would plateau, whether you want to keep, I mean, again, attacking level 40s is always going to be more beneficial than attacking a level 30 or 35, just because, and this is applied to some areas, and that's because, again, the higher level gnome boss you attack, right, the higher level materials, and then more importantly, when it comes to leveling up a second march, the higher amount of experience scrolls you're going to get. So you can use all the experience scrolls you're getting from attacking a level 40 gnome all into your second march that you want to level. Or you can attack a level 36 gnome, which is still going to give you the best in slot piece, or have a chance to give you the same odds as if you're attacking a 40 for your best in slot equipment piece that you can get as well, but you'll just take less losses, right? You'll get a little bit less on the experience scrolls, so you're not going to be able to invest as many into your secondary march to level them up as fast as possible. So it's a trade-off. It just depends on what you want to do. But that would also help with you developing second and additional marches in general. Okay, the next thing here is going to be, so we talked about Treasury, so Arena. So let's touch on Arena a little bit. Arena is a great source for getting characters or immortals from the Insignia shop. Now, if you click on Arena, you'll come up to the page where it most likely will show you your 3 opponents. It'll tell you near the top left what season you're in, your rank, and then it'll say what level you're at, and then your troop power. And at the bottom right, you'll see it's not a pendulum. I'm always forgetting what, it's like a scale, old school scale. And it'll say Insignia Shop. You click that, and then it will load up you being able to use your Arena coins for purchasing epic immortal shards. Again, this is another great resource for being able to just load up on shards that maybe you don't have for an immortal that's unlocked yet, or if you're looking to build out one. Now, the ones that will show up in Arena, and I will just give a quick example here. I'm going to post this in voice channel chat. So this is the Arena graphic that someone came up with after I had done the initial kind of posting for what the rankings were that you'll see. And so again, these are immortals that, again, if you're not able to already pull them initially, right, the ones on the right are where you can get them from the Insignia shop. The rewards on the left are what you get for your overall ranking. Now, keep in mind, Arena is more of a spender-styled event, just in how it is geared towards. So, as a free-to-play or even low-spend, you shouldn't really have any aspirations on placing high in this event, at least when it comes to the overall rankings. But being able to utilize your Arena tokens or Arena coins to purchase from the shop can help you get some unlocks and also potentially finish out some pieces for your march in that regard. Okay. And then also from your daily arena, right, depending on where you're placed, and you can see this if you go to ranking, or actually, no, hang on. If you go to rewards, excuse me, you get daily rewards as you move up in rank, right? So at the top, at Master, you get 120 green gems and 1,500 insignia coins every day just from daily rewards. So there is benefit in moving up the rankings. Even as free-to-play, you could probably still get decently high, maybe not the highest, but it's free gems and it's free insignia coins that you can get. So being able to fight, any of the battles that you can where you can get consistent victories is always going to pay off bigger dividends than if you're trying to get 3. You don't have to go for 3 times attacks in the arena all the time as a free-to-play. Sometimes it's good just to try and get to 6 points or 10 points if you're able to. Now, once you start early on, you'll be able to get these consistently. But over time, you'll start finding that as free-to-play, you're going to hit a plateau, and it's going to be more... It'll be easier for you to try and go for a 6-point victory so you can get those 2 insignia chests just to min-max the best you can. And there's going to be a lot of times where you probably won't be able to make it to 6. You just have to do the times 1 attacks all the time because you might not have a favorable matchup that comes up for you to hit a times 2. To get 1 times 2 and then 4 times 1s to get you the 6 points for that second chest along the arena line. So anyways, that kind of goes into Arena. Let me talk about Harbor. So with them kind of updating the harbor trick that some of us used to use, the piece here is that with harbor, you really want, I think in my opinion now, it's okay to do the 12 hours, even once you get to the higher levels. But I would argue and say, unless you're getting a lot of gold income generation, it probably is best just to do it one time. So you do the 12-hour gold once per day instead of trying to do it every 12 hours, right? Which would arguably put you at 2 a day. I think that is going to be more beneficial for you overall until you get to a point of where you are sustaining enough gold to pop it twice a day. Next, we're going to talk about the growth achievements and how you can, and I know we also have to talk about Academy because I totally forgot about that. So let's do that. Let's talk about Academy next and a typical path that you would want to take for Academy. So there's really about 5 or 6 tasks you really want to focus on. Starting with production, you want to go for speedy construction, which is going to increase building speed. Then you want to keep going down that to rapid progress, which is going to increase your technology upgrading speed or your tech upgrading speed for any future techs in the academy. So those are the 2 that you really want to focus on. Once you get to a point of where you've maxed those out or got those as high as you can and they're following prerequisites per level, per your academy level, then you can move on to Immortal, to the Immortal tree. So you kind of want to focus production, Immortal, troops, defense. That's the order you want to go in. With Immortal, you of course want to focus on Veteran because that's increasing your combat experience earned by Immortals, which means more XP for your Immortals to level them faster. Boost consumption, which is going to decrease the amount of gold that's used to upgrade a boost level. And then Outstanding Talent, which is the initial Immortal energy that you get. A starting energy, that's good. But really the first 2, right? So again, Veteran and boosting consumption are the most important. And then when you get to troops, superhuman speed, which is the increasing of marching speed, you could eventually get that to plus 50%. Again, great talent that you want to work on. And then you eventually want to get to, let me see, I think it's abundant supplies. Yes. So then you eventually want to get to abundant supplies. The reason why is because for abundant supplies, it reduces the action point usage for every time you go out in March. I think you can max this at 30%. You can. So again, it's a decent amount that you'll get off, right? So if you're attacking someone it costs 100 because they're right near your base, right? Instead, arguably, it may cost 70 about. So again, it's going to save you a lot, which is why it's really good to work on this and to try and get that as leveled as you can. Because again, just reducing AP costs is going to allow for you to hit more gnomes, more gnome bosses, and then eventually more players per the amount of AP that you're saved up, or that you have saved up. Next, we're going to talk about growth achievements, and this is going to go in kind of like to the market and the barracks trick. So in order to see your growth missions, you want to click the, I guess it's like a pull-out scroll that is right above your Well of Time and your Immortal tab. Now, when you click on this, you're then going to look, it's going to pull up your growth missions. And as you scroll down, you'll notice that you'll have defeat gnomes, which is, again, defeating 10. And this typically starts when you get to a higher level where it'll ask you to defeat 10 of that level or higher. The more important ones that we're really going to focus on is training troops, which is elite troops. Because, again, these are going to give you Lord EXP. It'll also give you some resources. And then we're also going to focus on, for a little bit, we'll touch on Industrial Revolution, which is research technologies for the amount that you do overall. And then we'll also talk about market purchase. Now, market purchase and elite troops are by far the most important. Why? Because they are the easiest to mitigate. They're easiest to manipulate, where you can take advantage of them as much as possible, which is just going to increase your Lord EXP, therefore increasing your Lord level, giving you access to deeper and more talents. Now, with elite troops, the easiest way to take advantage of this is where once you have max training grounds capacity, you simply just go in to your barracks for the troops that you do not use that often. You click train. And then in the top right corner, you'll see a button that looks like a helmet with a line going through it or a slash. And that allows for you to dismiss your troops, where you're basically just deleting them. Now, how I like to do it is I'll focus on the 1 or 2 troop types that I'm just not using that much. And I'll remove 10, 15, 20,000 at a time. It just depends on how much, what level I am and what my overall training grounds capacity is at. But then eventually, you may get to a point where you might need to remove some of your bowmen, for example, right? And anytime you need to remove units that you do use a lot, I would remove less of those, even though it would still be arguably okay, because you don't want to get to a point where you're only focusing on 2 or 3 units, because you still need other troop type units for your other marches that are going out and gathering for you. So you just want to pay attention and watch that closely. But this is an easy way where you can dismiss troops in order to keep training to boost your Lord talent and Lord EXP. The next one is market. Now the market trick is a little bit more of a kind of 2 to 3 stage process, but it can still be equally effective. It just takes a little bit longer. So with market, what you would usually do is after you hit a 9 times pull, I'm just going to use this as an example, you would then go into the alchemy lab. Once you get into the alchemy lab, then you're just going to do, you're going to refine whichever immortals you're not using. It's really good to click the lock icon that's in the top right corner of your alchemy lab so you can select which immortals you want to lock. So if you ever want to do the one-tap place and then refine, you don't accidentally one-tap place one of your epic immortals or multiple of them. That can be pretty demoralizing. So once you refine your immortals, you go into the market. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to purchase everything that costs purple gems or purple or soul shards, or I just call them purple gems for simple, but your universal soul shards. You'll purchase everything that is that only for the immortals though. So you're only going to focus on the top row, not the bottom row, which is a mixture of resource speed ups and other items. You're only going to focus on the immortals on the top row. You'll purchase everything that's purple, then you'll click refresh and you'll do it again. Now you'll keep doing that, and then eventually once you run out of soul shards, you'll go back to the alchemy lab. You will one-tap place or individually click, whether you do it one by one or you press and hold, and then you'll refine all of the immortals that you're not using, or the ones that you already have unlocked, which is another thing to touch on. I do think it's good to try and unlock all of the immortals because you'll get initial gem bonuses from the immortal gallery. That's just extra resources that you can use as green gem currency or premium currency, whether you're going towards something like VIP or if you're investing into Philosopher Stones. Then you just go right back to the market and you do it all over again, right? So it's a pretty simple rinse, wash, and repeat process, but it's going to allow for you to start getting more average or daily amounts of market buys to increase the overall amount of market purchases that you've made going towards your growth achievement, right? So those are the two biggest growth missions that you can really manipulate in order to boost your Lord EXP as fast as you possibly can. Okay, so I think that kind of covers everything. Before we open the floor for questions, let me just make sure I haven't missed anything here. The last thing I will touch on is, let me talk about building orders of upgrades. So this is probably the last big thing here. Now, the reason why you always want to focus on min-maxing your castle is because the higher castle level, the more helps you're going to get, which means the more helps you get, the bigger time reduction that you're going to get on upgrading buildings, along with doing any academy research as well. So these things are really important if you are trying, again, to level up your castle as fast as you can. In addition, the higher level castle building you have is also going to come with opening more assignment slots. So if you want to look at that, you would click on your castle and you click assignment. Now you'll get this after you've leveled the castle up to a certain point. But essentially what it does is it allows for you to put epic immortals, which is really what you want to do. You want to put epic immortals in these slots. There's 3 slots per. One is production, one's military, and the big one here is technology. This allows for you to really put your strongest epic immortals here that are going to give you the biggest bonuses, because they're going to increase your overall building upgrade speed and your technology upgrade speed. So it's just another way for you to start leveling up your buildings and your academy tech that much faster. So from here, once you upgrade your castle, the recommendation is just min-max, do the prerequisites, right, at bare minimum. That's whether or not you have 2 builders or you've paid the $5 for head start, where you can now get the 3rd builder. Now, again, obviously this also is with the other asterisk of you have to make sure that you are using a building contract, whether or not you have head start or not, if you want to eventually have the up to 2 or up to 3 building queues going at once. From here, after you upgrade your castle, you then immediately want to upgrade Academy and then Wishing Fountain. After that, you want to go Dwellings, and you basically just want to upgrade those to max. And then after that, you can start focusing on your prerequisites for your next castle level. The main reason here, again, is because you want to upgrade your next academy level as fast as possible, because you want to start working to getting towards those next 6 milestone techs that are in production, are in immortal, and then troops, right? Focusing on in that order like we talked about earlier on. Then, the reason you want to do Wishing Fountain, and the reason I think Wishing Fountain should not be underestimated, very similar to RSS buildings, is because you get a boatload of resources, especially if you get a couple crits when you're praying there to get ×2 up to ×5 resources from Wishing Fountain. I mean, eventually you're going to be able to get a mil to a couple mil once you get it to max level of resources just from your Wishing Fountain. So it's a big source for free resources, and definitely shouldn't be underestimated. And then after you finish those, the next reason you want to focus on dwellings is pretty obvious. Again, gold is the most finite resource in the game, so you want to make sure that you are maxing out all of your dwelling buildings, and then you can work on your prerequisites, right? So you don't necessarily have to level up RSS buildings altogether. Whenever you are upgrading your castle, that is the opportunity where you would then go back and start leveling up your RSS buildings one at a time, right? Because the RSS buildings are going to give you, again, a lot of resources just from having them all at your max castle level currently. So once you have reached a new castle level, you go Academy, Wishing Fountain, Dwellings, and then you start working on the prerequisites for your castle. While your castle is upgrading, then you go back and upgrade all of your RSS buildings one by one. Now, we recommend going in order of smeltery, quarry, lumber mill, and farm. So you're kind of going iron, stone, food, wood, or wood, food. But again, overall, it doesn't really matter. That's just what we recommend. Okay, I think that covers pretty much all the buildings that are really going to focus on general progression for Inner City. We will talk a little bit about Outer City, and we'll do a big topic on PvP as well. That's also going to factor into that. We'll cover that next. Before I continue, does anyone have a question on anything I talked about building-wise, academy-wise, lore talent-wise, anything we talked about Inner City? If you do, you can raise your hand if you are a current or existing member. Again, if you are a visitor, new member, or new to Discord, you are more than welcome to ask your question in the voice channel chat, or if you're just in a position where you can't talk, you're more than welcome to ask there, and I'll take a look in a sec. All right, let's see here. Oh, I thought I saw Zingzang with a question. Nope. Let's see here. All right, Zingzang, let's go ahead. Looks like you...
Also, just a quick question. Something I haven't found much info about is hospital management. Do you just let it fill up, or is there a management on it?
Oh, okay. No. A good question. Thank you so much for asking. I'm just going to send you back to the audience. So, to be honest, hospital, in my opinion, is pretty simple. Again, because, there's no helps that you can get for when you're doing hospital healings like you can in some other games. There's not really, I would say, an overall strategy to it. I would just say that if you really wanted to try to apply any form of a strategy, I would just say make sure that you are starting your healing process whenever you hit two situations. The first would be if you are nearing your max healing capacity. Because again, your healing capacity is going to be different than your overall hospital capacity. You can have a higher amount of troops in your hospital than the amount that you can heal based on the hospital level. So that would be the first one. Like, let's say your hospital capacity for healing is at 30,000 and you're at 29,000, right? That probably is a time where you want to heal. The other one, and this might actually be the more important one, is if you find yourself, whenever you're going to be away from the game for a while, and you're not going to be able to log in, that would also be a great time to start your healing process. It doesn't matter how many troops you have in there. If you know you're going to be away, even if your healing time is less than the time that you think you're going to be away for, still heal. It's just less overall heals you're going to have to do, and just better overall time management. That would probably be the second biggest tip I would give you when it comes to hospital, which, again, good question. All right, let me take a look at voice channel chat to see if anyone has asked something there. Tristan said, should I upgrade my dwellings first or my RSS productions? Okay, I just talked about that. Things like hospital management. Yeah, no, Yoda has a good tip there too. Heal when you send out all your gatherers. Yeah, that could work. Alright. So let me see here. In your other KB, your troops die if hospital overflows. Yes. Yeah, you can, Zang. So far at the moment, the way that hospital works is that you can, you can let it fill up. Now, there's a certain amount it's going to fill up to because every time you attack a gnome unit, a boss, or you do any PvP, you're always going to take dead. So your hospital at a certain point is only going to be able to fill up so much. But yes, there's not a current limit. You could have 200k in the hospital and they're not going to degrade or delete because they're starving, because you don't have enough food, or because you've overfilled it, at least at the moment. Okay, let me see where we're at right now. So, mortal levels. Let me see, you said you have a blue 3. What is best to swap out with a hold? So, alright. Alrighty. With a hold. Yeah, so let me see. Verisma, I would say that, again, if you have a blue 3-star, you can probably swap in a purple, even if it's a 1-star, arguably, for that. Honestly, even if you have an epic that you can fill into your March lineup, you can probably, again, low, if it's only 3-star, it's still pretty low. But again, otherwise, best thing is just to keep waiting until you end up getting more pulls and then doing more upgrades. Caro said, what is the best way to earn soul stones for free-to-play players? Good question. So pretty much the best way right now is you would utilize your Human Rebels event. So the Human Rebels event is arguably the best event for acquiring soul shards in a bulk or a large amount. In addition, after you do 9 times pulls from the Hall of Immortals, you break those down in your alchemy lab, and then you can end up getting more soul shards that way. And then you also will find that some soul shards can be available to you when you are... Excuse me, they'll be available to you as well for some seasonal events. So some seasonal events you'll find that you might see rewards in those. Typically you're always going to have some amount. Those are the column-based seasonal events. And then you might also find for some other events where you can get them kind of in their reward tabs as well. But as far as consistently, Human Rebels will probably be number 1, Breaking Down Immortals number 2, and then seasonal events when they come up. Again, if the points are bugged, are the rewards bugged? Again, I'm not sure because I don't think we've had human rebels come back for our server yet. But if you're at least still getting soul shards from rallying any of the rebel levels, then I would say it's probably still worth it. Again, I'm not too familiar with the human rebels bug, if that's happening on a couple servers or if that's game wide. I haven't heard anything about that. But yeah, again, just simply talking about what events are and which ways are the best to go about getting those soul shards, those would be them. Let me see, Mr. Okay, cool. Mr. had a question. Let me go ahead and invite you onto the show, Mr. Hey, Mr. Welcome. What's up? All right, that's okay. No worries. Just got to build up that confidence over a period of time. You're more than welcome back anytime if you have another question. All right, and I think that pretty much does it for that topic. Now we're going to talk about our next topic, and these are kind of going to be the last two big ones. So we're going to talk about outside the city, and we'll do a big topic on PvP. And then the last one is going to be kind of just going over a simple kind of general spending guide as well before we round out. So when it comes to what you're going to focus on outside the city that's going to help, we did touch on these a little bit already, which is basically going to be your gnomes, your gnome bosses, and then RSS. Now, there are going to be some events that will factor into your progression when it comes to what you're going to find that you're going to have to do. Well, for the most part, almost every event you're really going to have to do outside of the city with a couple. But when it comes, like we've talked about before, right, the order you want to focus on there is bosses, gnomes, and then RSS tiles for gathering, going in that order. Now, for the PvP portion, on how that is going to be affecting you, the one thing I will say is that the more PvP your server does, and the more PvP you do, the less focus that you are going to be able to level up and progress your account in the way that you really want to. And that's like we've talked about a little earlier. Oh my god, that was probably the best stretch / mid-yawn that I've hit so far. Okay, so the main reason again is because if you're focusing on doing a lot of PvPing, right, you're limiting your account's progression by one, you're not getting any immortal experience, you're not getting any equipment, and you're not getting any equipment shards or materials that you can then break down to strengthen, and then they also get those resonance bonuses for where you upgrade your equipment every 5 levels at a time together, where you can then get those bonuses. In addition, if you're focusing on doing a lot of PvP, then you're also wasting a lot of action points if your server is in a state of, not a lot of war or not a lot of challenging that's happening on the server, right? If you do not absolutely have to go out and fight, then there's really no reason to. Right, there's only certain times that you would really want to go out and do PvP. Those are, and I'm going to say this specifically against players. Right, the only time you really want to go out and do that is if you are trying just to get your bare minimum rewards for Contention of Lords, which is the kill event, or your bare minimum stage rewards for King of the Hill, which is stage 5, also kill event that lasts 2 days, right? And that's where you attack, anywhere from like 10 to 15 or 20 players or something like that you have to do, right? And for the most part, you could pretty much get away just hitting tagless players once your server gets to a certain point where it allows for you to mitigate the overall damage that you're going to be inflicting on players, so that way you're able to retain higher levels of server activity and player activity overall, which means you probably will not be playing in a dead server where then you'll eventually get depressed, demoralized, and arguably probably quit, leave, or just migrate out. All right, always big benefits. And this is just a general, this is a general approach that every kingdom builder is always going to face, right? You're never going to get around that. At least at the moment, you're not. So again, that's why, and if you're worried about, again, like doing things like boosting your nobility rank, which you can really only do from doing PvP, attacking either farming tiles or player cities or defending, then you would really want to look at when is the appropriate time to do that. And really the appropriate time, if you're looking at how you want to min-max honor, is honor is gained based off of your troop power, your opponent's troop power, the amount of troops that are in each march, and then also to an extent if you're attacking or defending. So the best way to really go about this would be to wait until you are higher level. Recommendation is usually minimum T4, which would be at castle level 30 with your barrack buildings at level 30. Oh man, sorry. I had to sneeze, and it was loud. Okay, so starting at T4. Again, it's all about min-maxing how much honor can I get for the amount of action points that I have to use, right? If I wait until my academy is more developed and I end up taking advantage of, oh gosh, let me scroll back here so I can see what that tech is called again. That's on the tree, so I can really hammer this point home. Where is it? Immortals. Oh no, sorry, it's in troops. It's AP consumption. What's it called? Abundant supplies. So if I waited, as an example, until I hit abundant supplies, and I was able to get this to level 5 or even arguably level 10, and I'm getting 30%, and I'm saving 30% action points on every attack, and I'm at, let's say, level 40, where I have T5 troops, I have like 150k march or something like that, and then I start to do honor trades, right? This is kind of the next level thing that an organized server can get to. You can do honor trading. So an example of this is in servers that we've ran, or that we've gone in with our last project, is we had channels set up that were basically honor trading channels. So if you wanted to find someone that was a similar troop power to you, and you would just put out a request, hey, looking for someone to trade honor, I'm available from this time, here's my troop power, right? You would just find someone that you can trade with. So an easy example is that you would find someone that you can consistently win against, right, with a march that they have that is at least a little bit less than yours, and they can do this a couple ways. You can actually manipulate this, where you can swap out one character from your troop just to lower your march down enough to where it's still strong, but it's now just easily beatable. You can also do something where if you just want to do it a little bit more microed than that, you can take off a piece of equipment or two pieces of equipment where you're barely lowering the troop power down enough, but you're doing it enough to where the person that's attacking can win. And then you just swap. You just do that back and forth at the highest level. What that means is that if I'm at T5, if I have my marching AP consumption for abundant supplies maxed out, I am min-maxing to the absolute best that I can, which means that not only am I saving the most amount of action points per each attack, but I'm generating the most amount of honor per each attack as well, which means I'm going to be able in the long run to get to count level 2, which is where you want to be able to get to, because once you get to count level 1, that's where you start having degrading honor, where you have to keep doing PvP to keep it up. But count 2 is the bubble position. So you get to count 2 faster doing it that way, and you save the most amount of resources, not only for troop healing that you're eventually going to have to do, but also for AP consumption. That would be the absolute best way to min-max getting to count level 2. It is not an absolute must that you have to PvP all the time, all day long, right? In my opinion, and this might affect some people depending on how you take this, right? This is for the greenies, if you will. People that are just newer to Kingdom Builders, or if they do not have a lot of experience in how servers can last a long time, right? PvPing is great, but you know what's more fun? is being able to go into a server versus server game mode and PvPing to my heart's extent. It would almost be like me going to Disneyland as a 9-year-old kid and just going hard all day long. Oh, there's Mickey. Oh, there's Donald. Oh, there's Goofy. Why is my life complete now? That is how you want to approach what your perspective outlook is on doing PvP. PvP is fun. Doing arena is fun. My buddy Shadow, who's in here, who just joined, shout out to Mr. Flexaflex, is that he loves doing arena. Many other people like doing arena. You can get a lot of PvP satisfaction from arena. In addition, you can also get some PvP satisfaction from doing Mysterium too as well. Once you get to once you get down on harder floors to floor 3 and eventually floor 4, right, where you're then kind of having to do a little bit more tactical approach to advancing in those, right? It's a little bit more of the kind of puzzle game at that point once you get to the deeper floors. So, right, there are things that you can do along with if your server has something like, hey, like here's an example. The way that we usually do it in our servers is we'll say, okay, the Forbidden Zone, which is the middle of the map, is going to be our free-for-all kill zone. So anyone who wants to fight can go in there, right, anytime. When we do Contention of Lords, which is our kill event, or if we do Stage 5 for King of the Hill, all PvP is done in the middle of the map, in the Forbidden Zone. That's where we do that. Now, one way that we've been able to manage the kill event portions for these two events a little bit more efficiently, is we've set up timers. So we say, okay, every 8 hours, which means there will be 3 rounds per 24 hours, which means there'll be a total of 6 opportunities, right, throughout these 2-day portion events, is we'll say every 8 hours at like 0 UTC, 8 UTC, 16 UTC, and then back again at 0, these are going to be like the peak fighting times. So everyone can line up outside the Forbidden Zone, and then every 8 hours, everyone just goes in and fights it out, right? So you're kind of doing like this, Hunger Games Battle Royale. That's one idea and example. You can also do things where maybe you set up alliance versus alliance fights, internal, like community organized fights, where you'll have one lead that's close in power to another alliance, and they'll say, hey, do you want to go into the Forbidden Zone at 4:30 UTC, and we'll each bring 20 players, right? These are things that we've done before. My buddy Shadow, who's in this call, right, was also an advocate and a helpful organizer of this when we were in S8 for a period of time, and it worked out beautifully. Sometimes it's just a matter of thinking outside the box on how you can keep engagement high, but you can also keep server health and player activity and overall retention as high as possible as well. It is fun to PvP. But the more important thing is building towards really what endgame is in these types of games, which are kingdom builders, and that is SVS or KVK, also known as Kingdom vs. Kingdom or Server vs. Server. That is where you are gonna most likely go up against, and this is just based on what the average game types for these formats go as. Is you're gonna go in and basically do a battle royale free for all against anywhere from 4 to 8 servers or 4 to 8 other kingdoms, and you all get placed onto a map, or you go and invade their kingdom or they invade yours, right? But you're able to go out and really let loose in PvP. So everything you're doing up until that point, in my opinion, really should be building your account out, right? To try and level it up as fast and as efficiently as you possibly can so you can enjoy what is by far the most enjoyable game mode in these types of games, right? Now, the flip side of this is that every server is going to be ran and potentially managed differently. Some people may not limit their kill events to just the Forbidden Zone. Some people might have it be RSS Zone 4 and the FZ. Some people might have all of the RSS zones open except for RSS Zone 1 or the perimeter cities. Or some servers might just have it be a server-wide kill event, where it's basically a free-for-all for those periods of time, and they'll just tell you, you need to suck it up or shield up. That happens as well. Again, it all depends on, this is why me kind of bringing everything back around to our initial topic, which is choosing a server before you invest, especially if you're someone who is interested in investing money. My recommendation is that if you're going to join a server, give it a couple days, give it a week, and interview these leads, right, the top leads, to say, hey, right, what's the plan for the server? What is your plan as an alliance, right? What is your plan for kill event? Ask these leaders, like the top 10, top 20, and see how they respond to you, because if they tell you that we're not going to work together, we're just going to do what we want, you most likely will know at that point that, you know what, this server is probably not one I want to invest in. I need to now make a new account in another server. Or if you really want to do it the other way, like let's say you're prepping a jumper account, what you then can do is you make additional accounts in these new servers to then feel them out, right? So you'll use the first 3 to 6 days to try and get a gauge on how is this server going to play out. If you have a jumper account, then you can bring your jumper account to a server you feel confident in after you've messaged these leads and kind of interviewed them and figured out how, trying to get at least a soft initial gauge on how the server could play out, right, based on what you want to do. And that, in my opinion, I cannot tell you how much more of a phenomenal gaming experience you as a player are going to have if you just do a couple of these steps, instead of what usually happens most of the time is new players get into a server, and because, again, in most servers there's no structure, so they probably find themselves in positions where they're getting attacked unnecessarily, and that can just be a big turnoff to players. Right, I can tell you that for myself, when I first started playing Kingdom Builders, the very first one I played, my thought was not, let me go out and kill everyone. I had no idea what this Kingdom Builder genre was about. I didn't really know anything, about what I need to do in game. So in my hope is that the majority, if not everyone who ever played a Kingdom Builder for their very first time, was not, let me go hard in the paint and just Hitler everyone, Let me actually figure some things out. Let me ask questions. Let me click on things. Let me read bubbles and descriptions and try to figure out how I can maximize leveling my account to the best of my abilities. And then let me start figuring out how I can support and help my alliance, so on and so forth, right? Compete in events. All of these things. Usually these are the first thoughts for most, if not all, players before it's okay, right? Especially if you've never played a Kingdom Builder before and you're playing your very first one, right? It's not, let me see how much war I can do. It's, let me see how much I can figure out about this game first. And that is where the majority of players are going to be coming in. It's one of the big reasons why we talk about when a new server opens and you have 40 to 50,000 players that are being loaded up into them right before a new server opens. The majority of those players, I would say arguably 98 to 99% of new players that are joining new servers, have no idea what to expect. Right? The 1 to 2% are players that are either jumping or they're just re-rolling in a new server. But they've probably played a little bit before, whether that's just in Infinity Kingdom or have previous experience from other Kingdom Builders. So because the majority of your player base are new players, they have no idea what to do. Right, which means they're easily susceptible to, leaning one way or leaning another way based on what happens. And if they're constantly getting attacked or they're not able to just progress their account and learn as much as they can, right, that in and of itself is going to be a big turnoff. Man, always nice when I can get a good, quality, constructive rant off. Oh, I feel so alive. So alive. Anyways, all right. With that being said, that is my spiel on when and how to PvP, and then how that can affect overall server health, along with a few other areas. Whew, that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that topic? And again, if you're an existing member, you're more than welcome to ask a question by raising your hand. Otherwise, anyone else, or even if you're in a position where you can't voice, you're more than welcome to ask a question in the voice channel chat. Ooh. Create piggy banks. Let me see. BTS? I want to speak with you for a reasonable fee. That's funny. I'm just reading through voice channel chat right now. Okay, let me see. Araya asked, how to deal with rogues on your server that have the strongest guy in their alliance? Oh, this is a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Let me hit you with a... that's so funny. That's Bambaro. You lovely troll, you. Um, let me give you a. Gosh, which one do I want to show you? Let me give you an example here. On. Hang on one sec. I have to find the video that I have. Okay, so there's a couple videos I have on this which are like specifically covering this topic of rogue players. So I'm just going to link a few here in the voice channel chat that you can watch, and then I'll give you a summary as well. Okay, so there's really 3 videos I'm going to give you, and they all kind of focus on different parts of how to go about dealing with rogues and tips that you can use. So let me do this for you. Okay, cool. So the 3 videos I just posted in voice channel chat pretty much all go over a different part of what we dealt with in S36 for the time that we were there. And we were actually able to efficiently and even more importantly effectively pretty much weed out the rogue players and the rogue alliances up to a certain point, where then it kind of all went haywire. And that's for a later video, and if anyone's interested in that, you can watch it on my channel. Though the takeaway here is that just because a player or even 2 or 3 players have the strongest troop power, it does not mean that it does not mean that that server is gone. Now, if or that you're in a really bad situation. If you have, right, and it is dependent on a couple things. One, the reason why our group in S36 was so effective against the 3 rogue alliances, where we basically dwindled their activity down to 1 alliance, and then even more so, about half of that alliance was actually actively fighting. And we ended up getting them to a point of almost no return, which they themselves admitted from one of their main officers in the alliance before, as Banbaro said, there was neutral gate, which is what I'll call it, that happened. Right, they were at a point of no return, and the reason we were able to get them there was because of a lot of these best practices that we applied on the server that worked out beautifully. Again, the short version is that if it wasn't for a couple of our family alliances going neutral because they, for whatever reason, either just didn't want to fight anymore or thought that it was in their best interest, right? That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back at that point, which allowed for the alliance that we basically at one point almost fully demoralized, and they admitted themselves they were at a breaking point, that if it wasn't for these 2 alliances going neutral, they would have been dead, probably within a week or 2. So it's funny, but at the same time, it's a sour taste in your mouth when you know you were so close to victory that the only reason why it didn't work out is not because of anything the Rogue Alliance did, but because of the leads, because of some of the leaders that you had internally within your group that just probably didn't have enough experience and or knowledge in the game to know to really assess the current situation and what would happen, right, depending on the choices that were made at that point. But again, going through these videos will help you out a lot. I'm going to go over a couple tips as well. So some things that you can do against rogue alliances or players is that, one, having a group helps out a lot more, because it allows for you, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, to act as a deterrent. So the deterrent means that active numbers is always going to be, arguably for the most part, more important than top power. Now, there is a small asterisk here. The small asterisk is that you still need some players to at least be close-ish in power to the top true power players, right? If, let's say you have 2 rogue players in your server, they're at 150k true power, and then the number 3 guy's at 100k true power, well, that might be a little bit harder to do. Not impossible, but it does make it a little more difficult. So the advantages that a group would have over rogue players is that the rogue players have to split up and spread out their AP usage amongst more players than your group of players does. right? Which means, yes, even though they're probably going to climb high on the honor ranking boards, which for the most part is pretty irrelevant, right, if it's just rogue players that are in your server, because rogue players are also going to have to use more AP on higher level cities. So an example of some things that you can do is, let's say your server is unified and you just have a couple rogue players, or maybe you have one or two rogue alliances, but outside of that, everyone is together. This is more or less kind of how S36 played out. Right, our strategy was, okay, well, let's raise the city levels from cities as fast as we can. So we spread out city distribution between, I think it was like 22 or 23 alliances for level 1, and then eventually a little bit less than that for level 2 cities, but still almost to the most amount that we could distribute it to. And then the game plan was, we told everyone, focus on one city at a time and invest all of your troops into constructing that city up to the next level. Why? Because the higher level city, the higher level garrison, more garrisons, and the higher wall durability. This means that if rogue players or the rogue alliance or two want to cap cities, right, they have to use the same amount of players between their 1 to 2 alliances over and over and over and over again. That is going to deplete their resources faster than it would your group of 6 to 12 alliances that are all banded together, right? Because you're spreading out resource usage among 6 to 12 alliances worth of, filled with, let's just, as a simplified example, 50 players, right? That means that you're going to have the same 100 players using the same resources over and over and over again. They're going to deplete faster than your group of, 300 to 600 players between 6 to 12 alliances, right? Just as a soft conservative example. This means that you're going to be able to, at a certain point in time, right, reach that breaking point, because once cities start getting up to a higher level, the rogue alliance or players are not going to be able to take cities as fast. They're going to have to start pick and choosing, whereas your group of alliances is going to have more overall cities than they will. Then it probably, at a certain point, is really just going to come down to a battle of capitals for the most part, or first occupation bonuses on capturing uncaptured cities. So again, even doing that, it's okay, right? The idea is that if you keep retaking cities, right, even if you're basically swapping, the point is to demoralize your opponents, right? And you do it a couple ways. This is one way to do it, where you level up cities and you spread out the alliances that are recapturing cities. So if they're having the same 1 to 2 alliances always capturing cities, you're going to rotate and have 5 to 6 or 5 to 6 up to 11 or 12 alliances recapturing cities, right? So you're spreading out, again, the amount of RSS usage you're using in a lot of different ways. Number 2 would be, it's probably good to have a bounty board. A bounty board is something that you can use from Alliance group chats. We also did this on our Discord server. So we had a Kingdom Discord server. We had 2 areas that we utilized these on. So one, we did this on creating an Alliance group chat, and we just titled it Blacklist. And any of the rogue alliances or players that were on the blacklist, we just posted coordinates in that Alliance group chat all day, every day, 24/7, like 7-Eleven, get your Yin Yang Twins on. It was amazing. And then we took it to the Kingdom Discord, and we had a gated PvP channel where people would post PvP chords on the rogue players or alliances, again, all day, every day. So this happened for a long time. This is how, right, keep in mind, there's always going to be a short momentum, right? It's like the burst of energy, right, from players that are starting out in a new server, right? There's going to be that initial hype, that adrenaline rush that happens. Keep in mind, if you're going to truly weed out rogue alliances and players, you have to be prepared to go the distance, right? Which is, God, is that a Rocky line? I was going to say it's a Hercules line from my Disney movie that I really enjoy from my buddy Phil, the Minotaur, or the Satyr, excuse me. And so, right, but you really have to. It's not something that you're going to most likely deal with, for the most part, depending on the level of perseverance and the amount of people they have, and also the amount of spenders they have, and then how much those spenders are willing to spend. You may not weed them out in the first week or 2. It might take a couple weeks, right? It might take a month. For us, in S36, it almost took about 5 weeks, right? For us, 4 to 5 weeks for us to get to a point where we were truly demoralizing our opponents to where they were at this near breaking point. So, right, and every server might be different, right? This is just a direct example I can give you from something we worked on and dealt with when we were in S36. So again, right, always attacking them 24/7. Set up shifts for teams, right, where you can have that. But the important part is, like, when you post something, Also post their troop power. Right, don't just post like a chord. Post a chord plus their troop power. Or if you're using alliance markers, then you would just post their troop power. Why? Because it's easier for you to find someone that you can attack, right? The important thing is you don't want a situation to happen where you have newer players that are just porting all over the map to players that you're posting on your chord room or that you're putting an alliance marker out if they can't even win a fight against them in the first place. This is why you always post troop power, and you can easily find this out by clicking on the player's city and then their profile, and you can see what their historical highest troop power is. This is what you always post. This will allow for your players to find winning matchups all the time. So again, I would say that along with posting chords, along with, again, leveling up cities, and then depending on how farther you really want to go into it, right, you can try and plant spies early on in alliances or players that you have with maybe leveled second accounts, right, if you just want to kind of get up to speed on information on maybe if they're planning sieges so you can counter siege. Another good thing is set up a rapid response team. Right, we had a rapid response team which was basically comprised of the strongest 50 players, or the strongest 50 players that were in the server. So it was our strongest 50 players on the overall troop power leaderboards. We basically reached out to everyone and said, hey, right, and these were people that were a part of our family that were just, coincidentally also the top 50 players on the boards, and we put all of them into a special rapid response team channel on Discord. So if we needed to ping them for something that was happening right away, a group of them or some of them could go and address something. Another great tool to utilize. Again, those would be what did I say, 4 or 5 things right there? Those would be some things that I would look at. Again, watch those 3 videos because they all give different tips on that. And I might actually do a seminar on it because, God, I could really break this down so deep. But anyways, yeah, I hope that helps answer the question. Let me see where we're at right now. Man, really intense stuff. Visitor. Okay, hang on. Dayearth had a question here. Dayearth, I just saw you raised your hand to come on voice. I just invited you if you're still around. Awesome. I think you're muted right now, but welcome. What's up?
I was gonna ask because currently on my server, we work in the process of weeding out these people. But what would you do if like a server is starting to slightly die off in a certain faction?
Okay. And just specifically, this would be for one faction that you're just seeing lower activity on, or maybe they're leaving to join two of the others?
It's more like a mixture of all of them, but one is just lower than all of them. So it's more like a server dying as a whole because of it.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. No, for sure. Well, first off, thank you for asking the question. I'm going to send you back to the audience. So, depending on how that plays out, it's funny because my buddy, one of my good friends, Toy Bloke, who plays over in Server 4, I think it is, he's the #1 True Power guy there, and I think he's like one of the top 20 or top 25 strongest players in the game, True Power-wise, at least from when I last did my audit for strongest players. He had something similar that was happening in his server. That was more or less happening along the same lines. And what I would say is there is a couple ways you can approach it. I think a lot of it depends on the context of what's actually happening in the server. For example, if let's say the faction itself just doesn't have good participation, right, for something like contention or relics, as an example. That could be a reason why some players might leave that faction color and go to another faction color. Let's say that alliances from the other factions are just recruiting top players from one faction. This does happen, where you'll have top alliances, regardless of faction color, will go out and try to recruit the strongest players because they just want to form a mega alliance, which is also extremely detrimental towards server and server health, and probably one of the worst things that you can really do. So that could be a reason for it. You could also have a situation where your players are maybe just not happy with the leadership that is happening in some of these alliances, and maybe they've been to a couple of the alliances within a specific faction color, and they've just come to the conclusion that, okay, maybe I need to go and switch factions and try a different alliance out to see if things are different, right? I mean, anything and everything in between could be reasons why. It could also be if your server's at war and you have one or two of the stronger or controlling factions that are just taking everything, and then players are just realizing, well, if I'm going to get anything done or have any chance of surviving in the server, I probably need to go over to the winning faction, or the faction that's going to have the highest chance to win consistent events like COR and others. So regardless of what situation, I would say that there is an extreme benefit right now to keeping all of the factions alive. And the reason I say that is because of the unknown. We have no idea how SVS is going to play out, right? We know it's being worked on, we know it's been officially announced, but we don't know how server for server is going to play out. And it could play out in a way where it requires all three factions to be active and have a healthy player base in them. Maybe they're going to have rewards based on the faction you're in. Maybe they'll have specific faction rewards. Maybe they'll have specific faction objectives. We have no idea. So my viewpoint is more on not limiting what it could be, because keep in mind, you cannot grow a faction. I shouldn't say that. It is so hard to grow a faction, if not near impossible, depending on your server's state, if a faction dies off, rather than it is to condense players into one or two factions if all three factions are healthy and active, right? So it's a lot easier to condense than it is to grow. And that's where the benefit comes in to having more active factions. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem of if you have a faction dying. What I would say there is that if you're able to, again, I guess it depends specifically what the reason is for why people are leaving. Again, like I said, it could be a mixture of things. Right? If you just have poor leaders, or if you have leaders that just don't have a lot of experience, and that's a heavy factor for why people are leaving, that's probably going to be hard to fix, because you're either going to have to go through some kind of coaching session with them, which, again, we all know how us as human beings take constructive criticism or anything towards us, right? It can kind of turn into a very prideful situation, and where it kind of goes in one and out the other, right? For some, if not many, when it comes to leaders in these types of games. So that can be a very overcoming obstacle. That might just be an immediate block in your way. What I would say is just try to stress to leads why it's so important to do that. Right? If you have a council or some kind of a server Discord set up, I would try and stress that to leaders on why it's important to try and keep three factions alive. Outside of that, if the faction is just dying and there's no way to resuscitate it, which really the only ways that you can resuscitate it is you would either have to try and get players from other active factions to go back to that, to go over to that faction or back, or you're just doing some amazing recruitment for your server to bring players into those factions. But then you also have to deal with the after effects. If you bring people into those factions, right, do you have good enough leaders and leadership within the lower active faction to retain those players, where they're not going to just jump ship, right? Are all the leaders on the same page where they won't accept players who try and go to higher ranked alliances and other factions? There's so many other intricacies that really play into you trying to resuscitate a faction itself. Usually if your faction is just dying or it's on that way, again, the best way is really almost going to try and bring in a full alliance and just offer that shell to them. But that's also going to be difficult because you don't know what level of experience that other alliance leads have. You also, again, I don't know your server situation. Have you guys been preparing alliance shells from day one, right, to anticipate migration opening up at 90 days? Again, there's so many moving pieces that really go into it. But at bare minimum, let's just say the faction's dying, no way of recovery. My recommendation there would be just to start filling them into the other two factions, right? And just kind of deal with the situation and then wait for a potential opportunity that might come down the road. Whew, man, it's getting hot and heavy. Hot and heavy in here, just dropping knowledge bombs. Just, whew, it's exciting. Oh, man, it's so fun, though. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah, it'd be like if you met an accountant that loves talking about accounting, which is not me. Area, you're welcome. I hope that helps answer the question. And Dareth, I hope that helps answer the question for you as well. Yeah. Well, Dareth, I think part of it, I don't want to summarize all of it to being bad leadership. I think a part of it is a mixture of some people who have leadership experience, and if they're just kind of, doing the definition of insanity thing where it's just going back to back all the time and they're not doing any improvements or any self-reflection, then yes, that is a big part. I think the other thing is that not every person that decides to be an R6 really understands what goes into being an R6. Right? You are managing a group of people. You are, in essence, a true manager, like if you were in real life. Right? You are customer service and your tech support all wrapped into one. And most people that go into being leaders, more often than not have no idea what the actual responsibilities and time demands are for being a lead. And that's why you get into those situations more often than not, is because of lack of experience and lack of knowledge. So be careful. Yeah. Anyways, so that kind of covers that. Man, we talked about a lot today. All right, so I think I'm probably going to wrap it up here because I need to go and get to my server town hall, which is for our jumping project. And I'm going to give a shameless plug here for anyone who is interested in looking to jump. If you're interested in jumping or making a jumping account, if you've enjoyed anything I've talked about so far, I would recommend going and checking the recruitment channel, which is the server or jumper recruitment, and I'll post that in the voice channel chat. And you can go look for jumping groups that are in there if you're interested in being a part of any. There are a couple that are actively going on, along with myself and our jumper group that is currently in preparation and recruiting. So again, shameless plug there. But I'm going to round it out by saying it's important that if you are deciding that you want to make a jumper, you need to check out multiple groups, because you should be able to ask questions, read information, right? See how those groups are organized and set up, and then make a healthy, conscious choice for yourself, an informed decision on which group you may want to join at the end. But again, just so you know, that's where you can go to look at jumping projects that are currently happening, and then also if you want to check ours out that we're currently recruiting for as well. I think that's probably going to be it for me on this week's show. Again, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I think we ended up peaking a little over 40, around mid-40s right now, which I actually thought was great. I love the fact that the IK team has set up a reaction role that's at the top, at the notice board, where if you go to Welcome to Infinity Kingdom, right, they give you an opportunity now to get notified for events. Big shout out not only to the IK team, but to Vita, and a lot of the other mods as well. I mean, they've been great to work with and have just given us a fantastic opportunity and platform to do a lot of these educational shows. And we've actually been able to bring in quite a few amount of players into Infinity Kingdom from doing these public stage channel events, because it gives you a chance for players that can discover these channels just from the new stage discovery. So not only are we able to promote Infinity Kingdom, hopefully in a good way, as somewhat of an ambassador, so to speak, that I'll just self-proclaim myself as in that regard, but also I think to educate and to inform players. I think of good practices and tips, and just so they can have more realistic expectations when they come in to Infinity Kingdom and Kingdom Builders, and then aspects and areas of IK as well, because I think the game is great and has a lot of potential in the long run. And yeah, that's it for me with my shout-outs and credits too. Again, I do have to get to our server town hall, and anyone that comes to these is more than welcome, right? Our server town halls on my Discord server are all public. You can find a link to that if you click on my name. There should be something in the whatever the special subject or heading line is, where you can find a link to that. Or if you go on the server or jumper recruitment channel, you can also join our Discord server from one of our posts. There's a link there that you can copy and paste. But that's it for me. Again, I appreciate everyone tuning in, whether it is the morning, afternoon, or evening. I hope all of you have a fantastic day, and we will be back next week with a new and hopefully more exciting topic, if not just as exciting. So that's it. I will catch everyone later, and again, hope everyone has a good day.